Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
With a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and my sisters. I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am so glad that you have joined me today as we begin the first of 4 episodes in meeting the candidates who are running for the episcopacy, running for bishop. I'm excited about today's group and the subsequent groups that will follow. And we hope to spend some time with each of them to learn more about their vision and why they think that you should elect them to the College of Bishops. Let me greet Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick and Mrs. Wendy Jones Reddick, our First Lady. Let me greet the College of Bishops and their spouses, chaired by Bishop James B. Walker and Mrs. Dolores Walker. And let me greet my bishop, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr., and Dr. Louise Baker Brown. And let me thank Dr. Teresa Duhart for her tremendous support. Couple of announcements before we begin. Certainly by now you have seen the announcement for the funeral services and activities for Bishop Godwin Thompson Umoate, the 60th bishop of the CME Church. If you have not seen it, check your email and check the CME Church Facebook page as well for additional information about the services slated in August of this year. And I'm certain there will be quite a contingency gathering in Nigeria to bid and to salute this great giant of a man, preacher, and scholar, our beloved 60th bishop, Bishop Godwin Thompson Umoate. And so look for additional details as it relates to his service. Also, beginning on tomorrow through Wednesday, we have the 11th Episcopal District presents Expanding the Body of Christ, a 3-day dedication service. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, Psalm 34:8. And this is going to be an exciting celebration with Bishop Kenneth Carter, the host bishop, Bishop Teresa Jefferson Snorton from the 5th Episcopal District, Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick III from the 8th Episcopal District, and Bishop Thomas L. Brown Sr. from the 6th Episcopal District. Again, check your email for the Zoom link, and let's make sure that we are a part of that. Next Sunday, I will be having conversations with the next set of Episcopal aspirants, which will include Dr. Charlie Hames. It'll include Dr. C. Kelby Heath, Dr. Ricky Helton, and Reverend Manuel Henderson. I'm looking forward to that conversation, but I am looking forward to today's conversation as well. Before I bring them up, let us pause for a minute as we remember and as we pray for those whose lives were tragically taken in Buffalo, New York. We are at a critical stage. We're beyond and past the critical stage where we're going to have to take some action that will prevent these things from happening, including prayer. That's what we do, and that's what we do best. But we are at a critical stage. So let's remember the families of those that were lost. But right now, it is my honor and pleasure to bring up our Episcopal aspirants. We are delighted to have all the way from Ghana, the Reverend Dr. Lawson, Kwame Adjei, Justice of the Judicial Council from the 10th Episcopal District. We have the Reverend Frederick Braddock, the presiding elder of the Elberton Gainesville District, the pastor of the Hickory Grove CME Church in Dahlonega, Georgia. We have the Reverend Diana Castille, the presiding elder of the Greenville-Texarkana District from the 8th Episcopal District. We have the Reverend Dr. Earl Griffin, who is the presiding elder of the Monroe District, the pastor of Lewis Temple CME Church, Grambling, Louisiana, and he also holds other connectional offices, which he'll share with you as well. And Reverend Dr. Vanessee Burns will join us a little later for this conversation. Let me say good afternoon to each of you. I'm delighted to have you spend some time. Let me warn the people who are watching that you need to go get your favorite beverage. For me, I have water, but I don't know what your favorite beverage is. All I do know is that God turned water into wine, and you can take it from there. But we're going to be in for the next 2 hours, all in, all in. We're going to have conversations. This is not a debate. And so I'll be doing one-on-ones with each of them. And so if you need to get up and take a bio break, please do so. But don't miss each candidate because they have something that they need to say and that they want to say to you. So I'm excited. Let me put the others back into our green room. And I want to begin my conversation with, of course, the Reverend Dr. Lawson Kwame Adjei. There is a slight delay in sound. So he's going to make just a brief opening statement. And then we prepared a video. He has prepared a video that we are going to share with you that talks a little bit about his platform. But while we have him, before the Wi-Fi gives out, Justice Adjei, welcome. Please make your opening comments to all of the wonderful people, delegates, and members of the CME Church who are watching you right now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Skip, and good evening to the revered brothers and sisters of the CME fraternity worldwide. I bring you greetings from Africa, specifically West Africa, a continent of abundant natural resources and culture, a continent that is full of love and all the niceties that you can think about in the world. I'm specifically speaking on behalf of the 10th Episcopal District, that is my district, and I humbly ask that you listen to me as I make my presentation through this video as one of the most experienced person as far as our work in Africa is concerned. I seriously speak this evening with a heavy heart because of the demise of our bishop, and I humbly pray that his soul would continue to rest in peace. Sisters and brothers in Christ, please hear what I have to say regarding this journey to the episcopacy. Thank you very much. My name is Reverend Dr. Kwame Lawson Adjei, offering myself to the office of Bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I strongly believe God is calling me to serve in this capacity. I have been an itinerant preacher for the past 31 years, during which I worked with late Senior Bishop Nathaniel Lindsay, late Bishop Charles Helton, Senior Bishop Elder Reddick III, late Bishop Ronald Cunningham, Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter, and late Bishop Godwin T. Umwete. These bishops have mentored and greatly inspired me to love and serve in the CME Church. I would forever be grateful to them. My motto as a candidate for bishop is lead. Lead. Going by the acronyms, L stands for leadership, E stands for expansion, A stands for accessibility, and D, development. Leadership. I intend to develop the leadership of the human resource base of the clergy and the laity. This is going to be done through the Montgomery Bible College in Nigeria an Reddick School of Theology and Leadership Studies in Ghana in order to raise resource people to lead our churches. Expansion. I intend to involve myself in expansion, my leadership through expansion in missions. And the missions is focused on aggressive church planting and fulfilling the Great Commission of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It is my trust to believe God to extend the church to Benin, the country of Benin, and Sierra Leone before 2026 General Conference. We also intend to expand the church, if elected, by building Episcopal residence in Ghana, Togo, and Liberia, since Nigeria already has one. The rationale to get Episcopal residence is to reduce the financial stress of living in hotels so that I would have more time to supervise our work. And since Nigeria already has one, it will help me to stay there longer to work and serve the people. Expansion also by having some kind of physical presence in which country we are, any country we are. This will be done by building a headquarters building that will serve the church in Nigeria, in Togo, in Ghana, and in Liberia, God willing, if I am elected. Development also through ecumenism. Ecumenism to ensure active participation and involvement of all our churches in the countries within my domain. In ecumenism, we enhance the identity, the national identity of the church. And we also relate with other notable denominations. So ecumenism also gives the church a state recognition. We need to enhance our membership with all notable ecumenical bodies of the various countries that we find ourselves. Expansion through short-term and long-term projects would also be considered. Short-term projects like farming, vegetables farming, that would lead us to plant vegetables like okra, cucumber, cabbage, tomatoes, and cereals like maize or corn. The long-term project would take me into farming palm plantations, coconut farming, which is quite a deal, a lot of money if well planted, and guest house in strategic areas where we have tourism increasing. These will be done by raising money locally through our own people. Accessibility. The office of the bishop will be accessible. And accessible because we are a connectional church. So we would ensure, or I would ensure with my team, that the office of the bishop is reachable to all, to reflect the connectivity of the church. Accessibility through politics would be encouraged, to let our own people go into politics in order to enhance our affiliations and influence. I have been a good example. I'm invited once in a while to the office of the incumbent president for prayer retreats and other spiritual issues. That helps. I pray at government programs where I am asked, which church do you attend? The foreign minister, the incumbent foreign minister of this country, my country, has been to our church just to say thank you for your prayers. That was a great enhancement of the image of the church. Development through spiritual capacity will be considered. Indeed, that is the basis of what we are as Christians. This will be done through periodic prayer retreats with the leadership of the church, the clergy, and the laity. We would be involved, or I would engage them in prayer retreats like breakfast prayer retreats, convocational meetings, camp meetings, where spiritual and powerful messages will be preached to inspire our people to move to another level of service for the CME Church. Development would also be considered through what I see as a can-do spirit of the African mindset. This would ignite our clergy, would ignite our laity to support the church when the need arises. I intend to develop that can-do spirit for us to solicit funds locally and internationally to meet budgetary obligations for the regional conferences of the church. 2022 General Conference delegates, I humbly ask you to consider me in order to offer good leadership in the CME Church, expand the church, ensure accessibility, and develop our Zion to another level of our time in Jesus' name. Lawson will serve the people. Lawson will lead the people. Lawson will dispassionately offer leadership in all the regional conferences. Lawson will be available to all. Lawson will be bold to lead and to make the difference in our Zion. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adjei. I do have one question that I'd like to ask you before you leave.
Okay.
What do you say to those who believe that we no longer need an indigenous elected bishop, that any person who is seeking to run for bishop should be considered to be assigned to the 10th Episcopal District? How would you respond to that, Dr. Adjei?
I must be very candid with you that would be very, very unfortunate, because I believe that the Africans are capable of really leading the people in the tent. The Africans would understand the work in Africa more than a foreigner. And as I present myself to you this evening, I want to say that I am the most experienced person when it comes to the work of our missions in Africa at the moment. And I understand the terrain better than any foreigner who would come in. And I believe that my services being made available to them at all times, which would really help supervise the work effectively, would move our missions forward. Getting a foreigner to come in now is coming in to learn, take some time to learn the people, take some time to learn the culture, take some time to learn the African people. And by the time he gets to know them, his tenure is almost over. So I want to believe that at this point in time, you have a qualified person who understands the work. I have worked as mission supervisor for 16 years. And mission supervisor is like a bishop's deputy, where I am assigned to perform the duty of the bishop in his absence. And this I have been doing for the past 16 years. I have traveled extensively to almost all the conferences in the 10th Episcopal District. And as such, I have a deeper understanding of the work in Africa. All I need is to be empowered to perform my duty, and I just want to believe that I will make the difference.
Thank you.
If given the nod by the church.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We are so happy that you were able to come on live in real time. We know that it is nighttime in Ghana. I will be in Ghana in July, God willing. And so I'm looking forward to being there. Thank you again. Godspeed and God bless you on your journey. And I look forward to seeing you in Cincinnati. And did I tell everyone we are 41 days from the General Conference, in case anybody is keeping count? The General Conference is 41 days from now. And so we are counting down. Justice Adjei, God bless you and your family and our wonderful brothers and sisters in Africa. Thank you so much. We're so blessed that he was able to sign on. I am going to bring up now the Reverend Frederick Braddock, who, as I mentioned to you earlier, is a presiding elder and a pastor, and who has offered himself for the office of Episcopal leader. And Elder Braddock, we're going to jump right in. And why are you offering yourself now at this time? And what do you bring to the bench of the College of Bishops of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church?
Well, thank you, Dr. Mason, first of all, for this opportunity. And when you said jump right in, you meant jump right in. I wanted to first say that I am Frederick Braddock, presiding elder of the Elberton, Gainesville district and pastor of the Hickory Grove Church in Dahlonega, Georgia. I am married to the lovely Sheila Crawford Braddock. We've been married for the past 38 years, and we have 3 young adult sons. I've been in ministry for 44 years in our church. And first of all, the reason that I'm offering myself is because I feel led by God to do so. And because of the experience that I have, the knowledge of the church that I have, and all of the opportunities that have been afforded to me by the church, I want to give greater service to the church and to continue to be faithful in the calling that God has placed upon my life. And I believe that because of my experience and because of my knowledge and because of all of the things I've done in the church, that I could be a great asset at that particular level, the Episcopal level of the church, giving wisdom, guidance, direction, service, leadership to the church. The things that I've done at every level as a pastor, presiding elder. And I believe that because I've been effective in those areas, I can also be effective at the next level. So that's the reason why I'm offering myself at this time, Dr. Mason.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elder Braddock. There is a strategic plan that I know that you are familiar with.
Yes.
And so how does what you hope to bring, your vision, align with the strategic plan that we hope to pass at the General Conference?
Well, first of all, let me say I believe the reason that we have developed a strategic plan is because we recognize some areas in our church that need improving, enhancing, and so forth. It is, widely known that we are dealing with a decline in membership in several of our congregations. There's a challenge when it comes to meeting our financial obligations as far as apportionments are concerned, and then church expansion, the need to do that because of the demographic shifts in our nation. So recognizing all of the challenges that we face, I believe that it is important that we do have this strategic plan. And my vision lines up with that, because I do also believe that in terms of my vision, that we need to look at how, first of all, we can strengthen the churches that we have. Mm-hmm. I believe in expansion, but I also believe in strengthening what you already have. And so we need to look at that. And I think some of the ways that we can do that is assessing the churches, where they are, which churches, what they need in terms of leadership, in terms of resources. And a lot of times I've discovered as a presiding elder that some churches, all they need is a little help. And it boosts the morale of the people to the point where they want to go further and do more. And so we need to look at that, how we can help and give back to our churches. Too often, and I mean, I'll just be real about it, too often, a lot of our churches feel like that all they do is give and never receive. And so we've got to change that dynamic and know that the church at large is here for everyone, and that we must do what we can in order to help our local churches so that they can feel that they are truly a part of something great, and that we care about them at every level.
Thank you. Thank you for your response to that, Elder Braddock. As a candidate for bishop, one of the primary roles of a bishop is to make appointments. If you are elected bishop, what are your top priorities in making appointments?
Well, first of all, let me say that I have an advantage, I think, because I am a presiding elder and have been a presiding elder for the past 11 years. I've served in 2 bishops' cabinets. And of course, the role of the presiding elder as it relates to appointments is that we recommend to the bishop the appointments, and the bishop, of course, makes the appointment. And, I believe that, first of all, we have to have an in-depth knowledge of the churches that we're trying to fill, and also an in-depth knowledge of the pastors we're trying to fill those churches with. So we have to get to know both the churches and the pastors so that we can make sound decisions and match them up as best we can. Of course, the reality is that we have to work with what we have. But if we do have pastors who are needing help in certain areas, then we have to do all we can, provide the resources, the training, and so forth to help them shore up those shortcomings that they have so they can be effective leaders in those congregations. And so I think it's important. I think you have to utilize prayer. That I should have said that in the first place. You have to prayerfully approach the appointment process, excuse me, and ask God to lead you in that process. But getting to know your pastors, getting to know your churches, I think helps a great deal in making those appointments.
Thank you. A follow-up to that, someone shared a question: is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why or why not?
Well, let me just say, I'll say from, again, my perch as presiding elder, I consider myself a pastor to my pastors. And I would say that a bishop should be a pastor to the pastors. Because let's just face it, all of us, even pastors, need a pastor. And I think it's important that bishops have a pastor's heart, that he understands the plight of a pastor and understands what pastors and their families go through. And so, yes, I would say that a bishop should be a pastor to the pastors, and so that those pastors have someone they feel they can go to if they need spiritual guidance.
Elder Braddock, what would you identify? You mentioned some, but let's go back to it so we can be very clear. What would you identify as the top 3 challenges in the church today? And as bishop, if elected, how do you propose to work with the bench to manage these challenges?
Well, number one, I think finances is a challenge. And when I say finances, I mean that, again, too many of our churches feel that they are, it's difficult for them to raise the apportionments, to pay what's being asked and so forth. And so we're going to have to find other ways to generate funds in our church so that we can lighten the burden to some of our churches in terms of conference claims or apportionments, whatever you call them. So that's number one. Number two, we're going to have to do something to address the lack of participation and attendance of our young people, children, youth, and even young adult. As I go around the church, I see go to churches and there are very few young people. And in some churches, there are no children whatsoever. And how are we going to have a future if we don't have children? In the church that I pastor, we have little children. And they cry and they holler and they run. And I tell the folk, let them do it all, because it's a blessing to hear the sound of children. So we're going to have to address that. And I think one way to address that is that we're going to have to provide ministries for families. People are looking for ministries that have children church, have daycares, have activities for children. And that makes it what I call children friendly or young people friendly. So that's the second challenge that I have. And then the third challenge, of course, I mentioned before, is a decline in membership and in attendance. And the pandemic has kind of not helped us in that area. But I think that if we address the first 2 concerns, then it will have a positive effect on the increase of our membership. And of course, we have to emphasize the fact that evangelism is very important, that we got to go outside the doors of our church and go into our communities and hit the pavement and knock on doors and just begin to invite people into our houses of worship and be a part of our ministry. But we have to provide something for them. You just can't ask them to come in and not have anything for them. So we have to develop programs and ministries that will attract people. So I think I listed 3 things there. I'm not sure.
Thank you very much. So in your understanding of the office of the episcopacy, do new bishops go in with a plan, or do you adapt to the plan that is already in? You've identified the challenges, finances of the church, youth and young adults, and decline in membership. Do you have, as a part of your strategy and vision, some plans already visualized that you would enact as soon as you are assigned to an Episcopal district?
Yes. What I would do, first of all, now I am a believer in, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if my predecessor has put some things in place that seem like they're working and they're effective, all I would do is enhance those things. But I would make an assessment, first of all. And I think one of the best ways to make the assessment, I would sit down with my presiding elders. And if there are those who are already there, I would ask them about their district and how, what things are going on, what's effective, what's not effective. So I would try to be a listening bishop going in to hear what's going on, what has gone on, what has worked, what has not worked. And then from there, again, assemble a team of people, presiding elders, pastors, even lay folk, missionaries, and come together and develop a plan to move that district forward. So, you've got to do an assessment first. You got to know what you're working with. I should say that my background is in corporate. And one of the things I would do as a corporate manager is that I would go into departments and assess what was working and what was not working. And then I would listen to the people, and then we would develop a plan to go forward. So that's what I would do as a new bishop.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions. Retired pastors in many districts are overlooked. How can the experience and wisdom be used? Or will you, as a bishop, see retirees as integral in the healing of our denomination?
I certainly would. At some point, if God willing, we're all going to be retired. And there's a wealth of experience and wisdom in the person of our retired pastors. And in some cases, some of our retired pastors are still pastoring. But even those who may not be pastoring, I think that to couple them up or partner them with some of our younger pastors or current pastors to provide wisdom and guidance for them. And also, I think periodically we ought to, I think as a bishop, we ought to sit down with some of our retired pastors and ask them their opinion and get their insight as to what they think needs to be done. So that's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience that I think that all too often we don't tap into enough. Now we do some, but not enough. And so yes, I think that we miss the mark sometimes by not getting with some of these retired pastors.
Thank you so much for your response. Let me share a couple of other questions, and we have quite a number of questions that came in prior to the show, and some that we have received. You talked about youth and young adults. If bishop, what is your specific plan to innovate and position the church spiritually, socially, and financially? And the reason I'm bringing this up, you've kind of alluded to it. But what I'm gathering, what I'm hearing from people is, what is the plan? Okay. And in your knowledge of the strategic plan, and I'm assuming you have read it and you're knowledgeable, will the strategic plan address some of the litany of concerns? Because it's almost redundant in a sense, because people are asking similar questions. Will it address some of these aspects, spiritually, socially, and financially, that will help to move the church forward? So in short, is the strategic plan the end all? Is it the answer to some of the challenges that we have?
I think it's a good start. Okay. I really do. I think it's a good start, and it does contain some things that we need to look at. But we must understand that the church is a moving entity, is always changing. And times are changing, and so I think we ought not just put a plan in place and just say, okay, let's go with it. But we need to reevaluate it yearly. We need to see how effective it is, and we need to tweak it as we go along. My thing in terms of my specific plan is that, anything that you think is important, you have to put emphasis on it. And if I think that children and youth and young adults are important, then we have to put emphasis on ministries that relate to them, to get them involved, to inspire them. I come up from the CYF, and those youth directors, they spent time with us. They taught us, and we were taught about the church and the hierarchy of the church. And because I was taught about the church, I think that's important. We must educate our young people about who we are. We have a rich and wonderful history and tradition. And I think once they learn that, they will appreciate that. And they will want to be a part of that for years to come. So I think that's part of what I would do, is to make sure that we put emphasis on our young people, on our children, and involve our young adults in that process.
Thank you. Just a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is typically misunderstood? You're not a bishop. You hope to be elected, but what is misunderstood? What's the misperception about bishops? in the church, in our church in particular?
Well, I think one misconception is that all of the monies that are paid in goes directly to the bishop. That's a big misconception, that the bishop is getting all the money. And I don't think that's true. I think if we, again, educate our people and show them from a general budget standpoint where the monies go, our bishops get a set salary, and that's what they get. And of course, there are other things that they receive. But I think that's one misconception that we have. And that, again, is we have to educate our people as far as that's concerned. And then another misconception is that the bishop really doesn't care about the little man or the little woman, or should I say the small church. And I don't believe that. I believe we have bishops who do care about all of the churches under their administration. So I just think those are a couple of misconceptions that we have.
Thank you very much. Let me ask this final question for you, and it's a little lengthy. As one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry? And then I'm going to list a couple of things: a strategy for matching congregations and pastors, leveraging the resources, human, financial, intellectual, of the Episcopal district to assist local churches. I want to start with that. What is your plan to empower local congregations for effective ministry?
Well, part of my plan is, again, to assess where those congregations are, look at what they're doing right and what they're effective in, and then look at areas that they can improve in. And hopefully by assessing the things that they're doing great and the things that they need to improve in, we can talk about the resources that they need. The other thing is that, we have a lot of talented people in our church. And I think sometimes they go underutilized. And I think we need to start identifying the talent that we have so that they can help us. Because let me just say this, a bishop cannot do it by him or herself. But we have to be able to identify talent and then utilize that talent to help us bring the church forward. I don't know if that helped or answered the question or not.
Well, thank you. Yes, I appreciate your response to the question, and I'm appreciative of your time. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to make your case. You mentioned we have a lot of talent in the church. We do. We have, I believe, 15 or 16 aspirants running, or let me say, offering themselves for the episcopacy. And it makes it a very tough and challenging choice. And so in your closing case, just take a couple of minutes, if you will, and make your case to the delegates. And it's a bunch of them watching, including myself and others, as to why you are the candidate, the aspirant for this time and season. So I want to offer that to you and take a couple of minutes to close us out with that statement, if you would, Elder Braddock.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. First of all, again, I want to thank you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity. I want to say to the delegates of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church that I was born CME, been CME all my life. I love the CME Church. I've given my life to the church. I have been active on every level of the church. I believe that I am a seasoned preacher, pastor, and presiding elder. I'm a reasoned church administrator, mentor, spiritual advisor, and friend. And I believe that I'm relatable to everyone. I have a heart for God, and I have a heart for God's people. I just want to give greater service to our church. God has blessed me to be able to give service, yes, as a pastor and presiding elder in our church. And everywhere I've gone, I've tried to enhance those ministries. My motto is that I will bloom where I'm planted, and I will leave a place better than I found it. And I think my track record proves that everywhere I've gone, I've tried to do God's will and serve God's people and enhance those ministries. But also, I believe that again, I'm relatable to everyone. I love people. I'm a people person, and I think that has a lot to do with leadership. That you have to love people. You have to be approachable, and you have to know how to treat folk and talk to folk. And I think that's a big part of being a bishop in our church, is loving people and letting them know that you're genuine in your love for them. And so, my brothers and sisters, I'm asking that you would consider me, Frederick Braddock, one of the next bishops in our church. And I believe that if I become bishop, that I will be the best bishop that God will allow me to be, and to serve the people of our church. Thank you, Dr. Mason, again for this opportunity.
Elder Braddock, God bless you. Thank you so much for the time that you spent, and Godspeed on your journey. And as we say, we are on the road to Cincinnati. We'll see you there in about 41 days. Let me also ask, if anyone wants to reach you or reach out to you, is there a website or an email address? How should they contact you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Frederick Braddock, and also my email is flbraddock@hotmail.com. That's flbraddock@hotmail.com.
flbraddock@hotmail.com is the way that you can reach Elder Braddock should you like to elaborate and be in contact with him more. God bless you, and thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, Elder Braddock. Now, again, I told you we're in for the long haul. We have 3 more candidates. So if you need to take a little break, get up and do that and come back. I am very pleased to present to you our next aspirant for the episcopacy. And I'm going to share this brief video and then bring her up.
I am Reverend Castille, and I am offering myself as a candidate for bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I believe God has called me for such a time as this. My sincere desire is to discover fresh, new perspectives to improve the CME Church without compromising the true essence of what our denomination believes and stands for. I am committed to working together to create innovative strategies designed to build upon our solid foundation. I am committed, concerned, compassionate about the church and God's people. I have served 3 congregations and all grew spiritually, numerically, and financially. I believe that a person should leave a place better than they found it. I have served as a presiding elder for 7 years now, and the district has been strengthened and thriving under my leadership. I need your prayers and support to become your next bishop of the CME Church. Remember, DC, Diana Castille, committed, concerned, compassionate.
Well, good afternoon, Presiding Elder Castille. So glad to have you here. And again, to those who are listening, there might be a very brief delay in my question and her response. But we're glad to have you, and we're going to jump right in it. You are seeking the episcopacy to be elected to the bench. Elder Castille, what do you bring to the bench, and why now?
Thank you so much, Dr. Skip Mason, for this opportunity. And yes, my name is Diana Castille. I am offering myself as a candidate for bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I have served this church in every capacity on the local level. So if you come to me asking something about the trustees, the stewards, the stewardesses, recording steward, I have served in every capacity on the local level, as well as served on the congregational level, regional level, as well in this church. I'm currently serving as the presiding elder of the Greenville-Texarkana district of the East Texas region. in the state of Texas. I have served in this capacity now for 8 years. And under my leadership, I believe that the district has grown spiritually and is thriving. We have made great strides, and God has really been in the midst and blessing us. And I've also currently serve as the trustee of the East Texas Region trustee board. And so I believe that God has called me for such a time as this, that God has equipped me and he has prepared me for such a time as this to seek the office of bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And we ask why. I believe that it's because I am committed, concerned, and compassionate. I am concerned and I'm committed to God, to God's people, and God's church. I have a love for God's church and for God's people. And I just believe that the time is now to serve, to offer myself to serve in this capacity of our church.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your response. And you shared a little bit about your vision. Have you had a chance to review the strategic plan? And if so, how does it align with what you propose to offer should you be elected as a bishop?
Thank you. Yes, I have had the opportunity to review the overview of the strategic plan for our denomination. And as I looked at the strategic plan and as I looked at my platform for offering myself as a candidate for bishop to serve in this Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, I find that a lot of the things, if you've looked on my plan, if you've been following me, that when you look at the strategic plan, it really is in line with our strategic plan. And so the number one thing that I want to bring out here is that I want to be able to ensure that our clergy and our laity, and I say first our clergy, have access to the resources that they need. It has been said that our clergy are experiencing burnout, and they are experiencing burnout. Not only clergy, but even some of our laity experience a little burnout. But focusing on our clergy, but we need to do an assessment, I believe, as to what is causing that burnout for our that the clergy is experiencing. You know, could it be the church? Could it be family? Could it be our secular job? Could it be a combination of all of that? We need to do an assessment to determine what is causing that burnout, so that we'll be able to adequately give and the resources and the help that the clergy need, so that they can be healthy and vibrant and have healthy congregations. And so that is one of the things that I believe is far important for us. And I believe that we should have resources. We should not, when someone come to us and they are experiencing burnout or they're experiencing some other type of breakdown, whether it's depression or anything like that, we need to have some resources that we can readily give to them, so that they can and help them in that process to get to to seek and to get the help that they need. One of the things that I do, even as a presiding elder, I have what I call like a little resource book. And when someone is in distress, when they call me, whether it's a clergy person or a laity calling me about a family member, I can readily give them and help them to get to the place that they need to be, to get the help that they need in that particular time. And I believe that we have to recognize that, yes, we are spiritual leaders, but there are some things that come before us that it's going to take more than us. And so they're going to need some professional help. And so having those resources readily available is going to help them. And then secondly, our finances of the church. That is one of the biggest things. And I feel that God has called me to be a good administrator. And so the finances of our church is one of the things. And when I say finances, I'm referencing more so as the assessment, because as we listen to the people, and that's very important, listening to the people, we find that the assessments and the apportionments or the budget, whatever we want to call it, that is the thing that comes up the most in conversations is that our assessments are too high. We need to do something to help relieve the churches. And so I've stated this before, we have the resources. As a denomination, we have the resources. Well, what are you saying? I'm the trustee of the East Texas Region Board of Trustees for the East Texas region. We have congregations that was once vibrant congregations that are no longer vibrant. Those churches have closed, and those buildings are just sitting there. We have land that's just sitting there. And so those things, and I think that we have to think smarter and think, how can this building or how can this land benefit us as a denomination? Do an assessment of the community, see what the community is in need of. And once we do an assessment to see what the community is in need of, and then we need to build upon that. And what I mean about that, do an assessment. Okay, do we in a particular area in which you are serving as an Episcopal leader, do we see in a certain area where there are low jobs or wages or no jobs at all? Then what can we do to bring aid to that community to employ those people in that community? And at the same time, as we are doing that, it will help generate funds for our community. For instance, we may be in need of a local shopping center or a small grocery store. Well, that would bring job security for the people in the community. What at the same time, it would bring revenues for the church. And so I think that we need to look at what we already have and take an assessment of that and see how we can make those things work for us so that we can alleviate the assessment, the budget, the apportionment, or whatever we want to call it, offer the pressure off of our people. I believe the resources are there, and we just need to tap into those resources, both internally and externally, to get the job done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
very
then
much.
As we look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
And then okay.
Yes. Okay. So you identified finances as a challenge, but you say we have the resources. What would be your top priorities if you are elected, going in on day one, and you are assigned an Episcopal district? What would be your top priorities?
My top priorities, first of all, is to, number one, is to get to know the people, to build a rapport with the people in that Episcopal district. And I start with the leaders, which is the presiding elders. And then I build upon who are the other leaders in the Episcopal district. And then I will move into trying to do an assessment to see what are some of the concerns in that Episcopal district, and have those concerns been addressed previously. And if not, then address those concerns. And I think when we look at it, most of the concerns that we're going to find across the connection is pretty much, I would say, in my opinion, from my lenses, it's pretty much the same. That is the finances, the assessments, that is to make sure that we have healthy pastors and healthy congregations. And that is to make sure that our children, youth, and young adult presence is in all parts of our church. And so those would be the top things that I will look at and to consider and to build upon. And, we often say that our children, youth, and young adults are missing from most of our local congregations and all of that. But then we need to, why are they missing? What do we have to, what plans do we have in place to motivate them to want to be a part, to want to be active participants in the church? And I think that all voices need to be heard. And so everyone needs to, quote unquote, have a seat at the table. And what I mean about that, knowing that we all can sit down, but make sure that every voice is heard. Oftentimes when we look at this, we look at and hear the voices of those that are in the larger congregations, in which those that are in the smaller congregations, their voices go unheard. And so just making sure that it's a well balanced so that all voices are being heard, and so that we can build upon upon that and to become the church and the church that we are called to be.
Thank you. And I encourage all of the aspirants and candidates to read the comments that are in the chat rooms on the various pages, the CME Church Facebook page, When We Were Colored, and the YouTube page. A lot of interesting comments. You touched upon it. Several have asked, how will you respond to the vanishing of our youth and young adults from our churches? What plan do you have to keep our young adults, youth, and children a part of the ministry? Talk about what you're doing now as a presiding elder to address issues and working with your pastors and churches as it relates to youth and young adults.
One of the things that I'm doing now as a presiding elder is encouraging our pastors to make sure that they include the children, youth, and young adults in every aspect of our church. Oftentimes, we just want to limit them to a certain Sunday or a special occasion, but we need to make sure that they are a part of every aspect of our church, no matter if it's the first Sunday, second Sunday, third Sunday. And we need to make sure that we have that we are hearing their voices so that we can plan adequately, because oftentimes we try to plan for our children, youth, and young adults without actually hearing from them to see what it is that interests them, what it is that they would like to know more about, what it is that they would like to do. And I can give you an example. I attended a services one time, and they were having a Black History program. And I heard some say, well, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have children, youth, and young adults presence at this Black History program. And so as I sit down and I went through that service, and I was thinking to myself and jotting notes that you planned this, but you planned it according to those that are 60 and above. And me sitting there, I'm like, how can this benefit me? And I'm not a child or a youth, but how can this service benefit me? Because it wasn't attention grabbing enough for me. And so, let alone for the children, youth, and young adults. And so I encourage them to make sure that they include the children, youth, and young adults in the planning stages as well, in whatever they're going to do in the church. And so those are some of the things that I try to do and encourage, and I try to make sure that our children, youth, and young adult have a voice in district meetings. And I encourage the pastors to do likewise, to make sure that every voice is heard, every voice is seen, and that everyone has a not only voice, but active participants in whatever service it is.
Thank you,
and so,
Presiding Elder Castille. As a presiding elder, I think you have some rural churches within your area, which might be considered rural. Have you given thought to, particularly if you're elected as bishop, to the subject of merger? It's something we don't talk a whole lot about. Well, we talk about it, but we don't necessarily move. What are your thoughts on the need to assess and merger and combine some of our struggling congregations to strengthen them, to make them better congregations?
Thank you. Yes, I do believe that, yes, as a presiding elder, I preside in mostly the rural area. And yes, some of our churches do need to merge. But we have to lead our congregations. We have to lead the people into that. We just can't say that we want to merge these congregations and not prepare them for the merger, because some people are tied to positions, okay? And they feel that to merge, they're going to lose their voice. And so we have to make sure that if we are going to move in that direction, that we have a plan in place to implement that plan, and to sit. But before we can implement, to sit down and talk to both sides and let them know, I think this is the best. This is best for both congregations, to make sure that these congregations can combine, merge, and be strengthened and move forward. And this is how it would look. Give me your feedback so that we can, because we want it to be the best for all parties involved. And I think that there has to be some planning taking place. And definitely there needs to be some merger, definitely. But also in the rural areas, when we talk about mergers, and we have to think about the widespread of our congregations. So that would mean that if we're going to merge and there's not a church within 5 or 10 mile radius of each other, when we're talking like maybe an hour distance between the churches, how is that going to benefit both churches or congregations to merge together when somebody's going to have to drive and don't want to drive that far? Because most of our churches in the rural area are senior citizens, those that are maybe 60 and above or 70 or above. And so there's a lot that we have to take into consideration and to see if it's feasible to merge the churches, or what else can we do? Mm-hmm. Because I'm in that position right now where I am having to oversee or to pastor a church. And we know in Texas that we don't pastor, but there's a church that is without a pastor. And it's because that church cannot financially pay a pastor to come and every other Sunday, because it's a twice a month Sunday. And so those are some of the things that we have to look at. And we have talked about in that particular church having that member to move to another congregation, but there's not another CME. There's one that's maybe the next town over, but we're talking about an elderly person. And so I think that we have to look at the age of the people in the congregation when we talk about merging, or would it be best to do something differently?
Thank you. We have another question from Dr. Nellie King. What would your action plan look like in year 1 through 4 as a CME bishop?
The action plan as it relates, I'm assuming she's referring to the strategic plan as it relates to the strategic plan. And first of all, that goes back to the assessment of the Episcopal district, and to see where we are as that Episcopal district and what has been started, and then build up on that. If we know it's the finances that we're going to have to tackle first, then there needs to be an action plan put in place. We need to call the leaders of the Episcopal district together. We need to see we need to see the makeup of that Episcopal district, and to see what resources in that particular Episcopal district are readily available. We need to see who has gifts that can do certain things, such as grant writing and things of that nature. And then also we need to focus on, as I stated earlier, look at the health of the pastors in that Episcopal district, and the health of the congregations, so that and to look at that to see what we can do to make the congregations and pastors to work more readily together, and so that they can be the vibrant congregations that we would like for them to be. And we need to make sure to look at that every person is represented at the table, so that we can work this strategic plan so that we can get to the level that we need to be at as it relates to what has been before us and coming before us to be voted upon.
Thank you. If elected, with which departments and committees as a bishop are you interested in working? What experiences, jobs, and skills do you have that you can apply to those areas?
Okay. I have worked with the Community Services of Northeast Texas, Inc., and I worked with the Head Start program. And I worked, I started out there as teacher, and also I went to center director. And then within a year's time, I was in upper management as the educational manager. And then I was the disability and mental health specialist while working at Community Services of Northeast Texas, the Head Start program. I am familiar with we was federally funded, 80% federally funded, and 20% came from, of course, in-kind, and which is donations. And so I have the skill set of working with large budgets. I have the skill set of working with people, all people, not just our particular race of people, but merging out into the communities and reaching out to other individuals. I have the experience of recognizing when someone is in distress. And so those are some of the things that I have done. And also I was on the federal review team for the Head Start program, where I went and reviewed other Head Start programs to make sure that they were in compliance with the federal government and all of that. And so those are some of the job skills that I have done prior to becoming a full-time minister in the church.
Thank you.
And so the question, I think one of the questions was what departments would you be interested in working with? I see myself as I can work with every department. I do have a passion also for evangelism and missions. I do have a passion for that. And I've also, of course, I have a passion for the working with the finances as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My final question to you, and let me pull that question up. I think it came from Dr. Richard McDuffie. Bishop Lakey once said that the most important job that a bishop has is making appointments to the local churches. With that being said, how do you hope to address the lack of qualified preachers being admitted to trial to pastor our churches? And in light of new persons coming into the itinerancy that don't see the itinerancy in the way preachers in past generations were accepting of the itinerancy. Okay.
First of all, I believe it goes back to the local congregation when a preacher is first said that there's a calling on their life. I think first and foremost it goes back to there because, and then moving forward, that the preachers and I say the reason it goes back to there because we know in that phase we can see pretty much where a person is. And if they're on, if they have an understanding of the itinerant ministry and what it is. And so I believe that it needs to be, it does need to be addressed. And one of the ways that I would address it is to meet with that ministerial board of examination as they look at the preachers that are going to come forward and get an assessment from them, from the preachers, but also spending some time with that preacher myself as an Episcopal leader, and to see where their strengths and weaknesses are. And then wherever their weaknesses are, then we need to try to build upon those weaknesses instead of just allowing them to go from one step or level of the church until the next level. We need to address those weaknesses that they may have so that we may build them and get them to the level that they need to be the pastor that they can be, and understanding the itinerancy ministry, that it's not always where you want to go. It's a lot of times where you go where you are sent. And so a lot of times our pastors do not understand what it means to be itinerant. Sometimes our pastors have a lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. And so as a leader, and when I say leader, I'm talking about all of us that is involved in that process, but especially as an Episcopal leader, we have to make sure that those issues for that pastor is being addressed, so that we can help them get to where they need to be, so that they be able to lead a congregation no matter where they are sent. And so I just believe that it all goes back to leadership and assessing and building upon their weaknesses.
Thank you very much. If elected bishop, I did say that was the last, but one question just came in for you, and I think it's important to ask. If you are elected bishop, you are the bishop of all pastors, male and female, but they did ask, will you offer sessions? Will you offer sessions to hear from lay women, non-clergy? So I thought that I would share this question if you'd like to respond.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to respond to that, because those who know me know the answer to this. And those of you who don't know, then you're about to find out. When I say that everybody has voices need to be heard and need to have a seat at the table. And so that's basically what I mean, not only clergy, but also the lay, and yes, the lay women, because I believe that everyone in the church has something to bring and something to offer, and we can learn from one another. And so, yes, most definitely, I will listen to the lay women that are non-clergy in the church if elected to this office.
Thank you, Elder Castille. So now, as I ask Elder Braddock, and I'm asking you to make your closing case, your closing statement, your closing argument. Why should the delegates of this conference, 41 days out from the General Conference, elect you as a bishop of our church for this season and time? Would you take a couple of minutes to close and make your closing statement, please?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Skip Mason, and thank you for this opportunity for us to share in this platform. You've heard I am Diana Castille. You've heard I've served in every capacity on the local level. I've served on regional level. I've served on the connectional level. You've heard that I have a passion and love for God's people and God's church. I am a true leader with a servant's heart that cares about people spiritually, physically, and mentally. I am a team player that values what every individual brings to the table. Yes, I'm always willing to help others, no matter what the situation is, to make sure that every individual that I encounter, whatever they may be lacking, that they may receive and be whole. And I'm one that will provide spiritual guidance to all people, regardless if you're clergy or laity or a child or young adult or children, regardless. And to sum everything up, I am committed. I'm committed to God's church. I'm committed to God's people. And I think that when you review my track record, you will find that to be true. I am concerned about our church, and I hope that I brought out some of the things that I am concerned about and some of the things that I plan to do if elected to this office of the episcopacy. And I am compassionate as I've stated, about God's people and God's church. It has been said, and in fact, it was once said to me, Diana, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I believe that I am that person. I care about you, not just what I can get out of you, but I care about you as a whole being. And so I ask you, as I've asked you before, yes, please continue to pray for me on this journey. I've asked you before, and I thank you before for your prayers. I thank you for your support. And now I'm asking you to vote for Diana Castille for Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in 2022. I promise you, you won't be disappointed if you want someone that's going to work with you and it's going to hear you. And we're going to put some plans in place to help move our church forward in this season. So thank you so much. May God bless you and may God keep you is my prayer.
Thank you so much, Presiding Elder Diana Castille. If you want to learn more about her campaign and what she offers, you can go to her website, www.castilleforbishop.com. And also, I believe your mother recently passed. We are lifting you and your family up in prayer. God bless you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in Cincinnati in how many days? 41 days. God bless you, Elder. My brothers and sisters, if you need to take a quick break, we have 2 more candidates to come. And so go and take a quick break and come on back. Bring your hot tea with you as we prepare to share in a conversation with Reverend Dr. Adjei Griffin. Let me just play a little bit of this video and then I will bring him up.
Good morning, good afternoon, or whenever you're listening to this video. My dear brothers and sisters, delegates to the General Conference, I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this short video. My name is Adjei Griffin Sr., an aspirant for the office of Bishop. I am 66 years of age, a faithful, fearless, fruitful member of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. This election is pivotal. It will undoubtedly set the stage for the growth and stability of our Zion for years to come. I care. I'm holding on to my faith that God is not finished with the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Yes, we have challenges. Yes, we need to embrace a period of reformation and confrontation, a quadrennial where the needs of our members trump any individual or selfish ambitions of our leaders.
And so, why use a recording when we have them here in person? Amen. We have the Reverend Dr. Adjei Griffin here sharing. Dr. Griffin, so delighted to have you. Welcome. And as I said to the others, you are offering yourselves as a candidate. Why are you running now, and what do you bring to the bench?
Well, good afternoon, Dr. Mason, and thank you for another opportunity to share my vision for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Why am I running? First of all, because God calls, and God calls through various and sundry ways. He called me through a bishop nearly 6 years ago who saw leadership qualities in me that he thought would be good for the CME Church. He called me through some of my peers on the Presiding Elders Council, where I serve as president of the Congregational Presiding Elders Council. He called me through prophets when I was just 12 years old. He called me in the midnight hour as I lay meditating and reflecting on this church and our way forward. Why now? Because I believe that we need in office those who are like the sons of the tribe of Issachar, those who knew what should be done, those who understood the times. And so I am offering myself because I have heard the call, and I am praying that this church will also hear the call and elect me one of its next bishops. What do I bring to the table? I have 20 years of military service, most of those years spent in organizational development, where my assignment was to streamline organizations, to reform these organizations with material and personnel to fight the present age. I firmly believe that our church, and as is evidenced by the resolutions that we see in the Blue Book this time, that our church is in need of streamlining. It is in need of being reshaped and reformed to meet current realities that can meet current challenges. And so I offer myself as a bishop, not as the one that knows it all, but the one who is listened to hear, listen, and share in the solutions necessary to make this tender plant continue to thrive in years and years to come. Not only that, but I bring the skill set of leadership development. I am a facilitator, speaker, and coach with the John Maxwell Group. I have served as the leadership and development curriculum key person here in the 4th Episcopal District, most specifically in the Louisiana Region Annual Conference. Leadership is my bent. I am concerned about the development of leaders and allowing those leaders to surface and to shine and to do something great for God through the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. So I'm excited about the journey. I'm excited about being one of the aspirants among this large cadre of aspirants. And I can tell you that no matter what the church does in June, we've got some individuals who are poised to make a difference for the betterment of this church.
Dr. Griffin, would you prioritize, and you sort of alluded to it, what are the 3 major challenges of our church right now? And if you are elected bishop, how do you propose to address some of those issues?
One of the major priorities for me as I see our church is that we do not lose the precious gift of prayer. That we do not think that because of our education, our intellect, that we can move this church forward, but that the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church will be known by prayer, known as people who love God, who come together and pray and fast and seek God's face, and then allow God to speak to us through God's leadership at all levels of the church. That is the first and foremost. And I'm so encouraged by the connectional prayer ministry that meets every morning for prayer, and those bold warriors who meet with us to pray for our Zion. That is something that I think was God sent to us, and I applaud those connectional prayer ministry persons for leading us. And I just want to say that for me is a top priority. Second of all is the fact that we need to preach in such a way that young men and young women will hear the call from God to join the cadre of ministry, preaching, outreach ministries, lay ministries in their local church. We need to preach a gospel that is liberating, a gospel that causes people to want to rise up and be about God's business, not maintenance preaching, but preaching that will set their souls on fire, preaching that will expose them to the Spirit of God. I believe that is our second challenge. And then our third challenge is to ensure that we do not forget to ensure we have strong families in our churches. Strong families, husbands, wives, children, youth, young adults, all working and serving God together, all coming together because of who God is and who God has called them to be. These three priorities, I believe, will open the floodgates for us to be able to deal with our stewardship, deal with our youth and young adult challenges, deal with every facet of our church. But we must return to the basics. And those three things are basic to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. Let me share a question that has come from one of the viewers. What is your realistic plan on assessments, especially for those churches who for years have declined in their membership?
Dr. Mason, this question is a complex question, but I want to just add a few nuggets to it, not to try to answer it in toto at this time. But let me say that we are stewards of God. At my church, where I pastor, Lewis Temple CME Church, each Sunday morning before offering, I read a portion of scripture that deals with stewardship. I remind the members that everything that we have comes from God, and that we're only offering back to God that which he has already blessed us with. A realistic plan for assessment starts with people being faithful to the command of God as it pertains to their giving, to their service, to use of their talents and gifts, to loving one another, etc., etc. I believe that a vibrant church will be able to meet any challenge that is presented before it. And so I am hoping and praying that we are in what I call transition, that God is doing something great behind the scenes for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, that God is working and developing people, entrepreneurs, and those types of people who will bring forward the creative and innovative strategies and plans that we need so that assessments will not be first and foremost on our mind. I believe that God and winning souls will take priority. And when you win souls for Christ, when you do disciple making, you will have everything you need, because my faith says where God guides, God will provide. Now, having said that, let me also hasten to say that churches are in decline for valid reasons, that members are few for valid reasons, that churches have borne the heat of the day in ministry through the civil rights era and through racism and discrimination down through the years. They have persevered. They have taught their children of their greatness and informed their children that the world is their parish and they don't need to stay locally to get anything done. Wherever God guides, they support their children, whatever schools they wish to attend, whatever careers they feel called to. And as those children have gone out into the world, the CME Church has not paid attention to the demographics. We must pay attention to demographics. And it's sort of like the city growth plan. Atlanta has a certain growth development plan that they are enacting. And if you want to be a major player in Atlanta, then you must align your career path, your entrepreneurial goals toward those areas that the city is heading. It does no good to build a daycare center in a place where everybody's leaving from. So we need to be attuned. And for that, then we need to make sure that our pastors, our elders, our lay persons are in line and in step with what is happening in the cities where they're located, such that we might need to reignite imagine the building as a multi-purpose center, not just a place to come and worship, that might need a director of that center who is also perhaps a called man or woman of God, who can do a service when needed, but whose primary mission is to reach the needs of the people in that area. So we need to take bold steps, bold actions, such that assessments will not be on our lips as it is today. People really do highlight challenges when growth is thwarted. But when the church is growing, when the people are active in their communities, I believe there are always those that God will send to meet the needs of that local church. And we never know, but that person who comes and sits in the back of the church out in the rural community comes with the check that will cover every bit of their assessments, but just wants to be loved and welcomed in that congregation. And these things are happening every day here in Louisiana, and I'm certain in other Episcopal districts. God does not leave his people without hope. And so I want to say to our church and to our delegates today, you may be in transition. And when you're in transition, there are birthing pains. But do not give up on the provisions of God. Pray, seek God's face, let God know what God already knows, and then watch God do great things for us as a denomination.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. You've had a chance, I assume, to read the strategic plan. Is it a viable and doable plan in your view? And is it the answer to many of the concerns that are being addressed, even in real time in the chat, and the concerns that you've heard about being a presiding elder and on the campaign trail? Talk about your understanding of the strategic plan and how will it help our church?
I have perused the strategic plan, and I believe that it is in line with where our church needs to go. It gives us not only the strategies and goals, but it provides what I call tools, handbooks to help us. It does not say that we're going to be engaged in vibrant church stewardship without giving us a companion manual, training manual on what vibrant church ministry is all about. It does not say that we are going to develop stewardship as a major focus in our church, but it also gives us a handbook to guide our discussions and our actions. It does not just say that we're going to be engaged in discipleship, but it gives us a handbook that we can use. In other words, the strategic plan has not left us empty-handed with just bold ideas. It has given us handbooks where we can put these ideas on the ground. But let me say that paperwork is not a solution. It takes energetic effort on behalf of all of us as Christian Methodists to make this strategic plan be what it is designed to be. That includes every level, lay, clergy, young adults. We must come together as one church focused on the will of God in these last days. And I believe that this is a good start. I believe that other people will write other manuals and other types of pamphlets to support and enhance these booklets. I believe that we have leaders who are excellent in teaching that will be able to take these tools in each Episcopal district. And really, when we come back again in the next General Conference, we will see a marked improvement in our Zion. So yes, I believe that this strategic plan should be upheld. And I believe that we should already be thinking of ways to implement it where we are locally. Even as a presiding elder, I see great merit and value in this strategic plan. So I'm excited about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. Is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why or why not? And the second part of that, if the bishop is the pastor's pastor, and you are elected, please explain your plan for guiding your pastors to spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health.
Can you leave that second part up there as well?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You've asked a very interesting question. Is the bishop the pastor's pastor? And in terms of what I have known a pastor to be, I would say the bishop is more of the pastor's coach or mentor than the pastor's pastor. I believe that each pastor already has a pastor before they even get ordained in the church. I believe that there are spiritual sons and daughters that have nothing to do with the CME church. In other words, I believe that that person who spoke into that individual's life, that calls them to want to be preachers, that's their true pastor. That's the voice that they heard. But I believe a bishop's role is to guide the pastor. And so in doing that, in being a coach, certainly we would provide assistance through training and development, through retreats and such programs that will provide an outlet for the spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health of those pastors. I believe that we have chaplains in our Zion who can design emotional programs. We have the Department of Financial Investment that can design financial programs. We have plenty of physical therapists and plenty physical coaches where we can include a portion of our meetings toward physical health, which you've seen done, especially in the 5th Episcopal District and in the 4th Episcopal District. We've seen people come on while we're sitting on Zoom and say, okay, we're going to take a minute to exercise. All of these actions, the bishop and the cabinet and the leaders of the Episcopal District can make a part of our everyday lives. So I think that is a better position for a bishop to be a coach and to be a mentor. But I think that for a pastor to see their bishop as their pastor, that would involve bringing all of their woes and cares to their bishop. And I don't think that's necessarily what we're here for. I think that the bishop is to be a representation and a reflection of God toward the people, and a representation and a reflective to God for the people, or the people to God. So we stand in the gap, praying and interceding, and we are living our lives before people. They don't see us as perfect. They see us as growing. They don't see us as God. They see us as servants. And so therefore, I think it's dangerous for the bishop to try to take on that role of being a pastor's pastor, but certainly being a mentor and a coach. I believe we'll get more bang for our buck.
Okay, thank you. This next question, as one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry? There are 4 parts to this, but I'm going to share 2 parts with you: guiding and measurement of congregational renewal and revitalization, and supporting clergy and laity in your Episcopal district by removing the traditional denominational barriers to a successful ministry. I'll put it up again so that you can see it. As one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry? And consider the following: guiding and measuring, and the measurement of congregational renewal and revitalization, and supporting clergy and lay in your district by removing the traditional denominational barriers to a successful ministry.
That last section just captured my attention, because I thought within myself, what are the traditional denominational barriers to successful ministry. What are these things? What are these barriers of which we speak? And I think one of the barriers that we can do something about is how we talk about our church. Because as a pastor over the last 30 plus years, I have been in meetings, I have been in arenas where people have disparaged our beloved traditions and have concluded that these traditions prevent them from doing successful ministry. That has not been the case in my ministry. For example, when I went to St. Paul CME Church in Shiloh, Georgia, I encountered a vibrant congregation. They were moving forward, but I saw a need to include the youth and young adults, primarily the young adults. So what I did, I chose 21 young adults to be a part of my leadership academy. And I gave those 21 the opportunity to walk with me as their pastor, to learn about our church, and to consider becoming leaders in our local church. Now, there were those who were elderly, who did not see a need for what I had proposed, who really were in staunch opposition to it because they thought that they were going to be replaced or removed, which was not my intention. But I met with that group, trained that group in every facet of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I paired them with the senior statesmen in the steward board, trustee board, stewardess board, etc. And after a period of a year or two, I began to integrate them as leaders in those areas. It worked well. They are still leaders in that church today. They have indeed taken on the reins of leadership in that church today. And so that is how I want to address that particular area. The first part of the question, would you put that up again? The first part of the question. Have you lost it?
No, here we go.
Okay.
As one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry?
One of my plans is to ensure that each local church in its community is visible. By that, I mean that I would like to see each local church have members who attend city council meetings, who attends rallies for social justice, who are engaged in nonprofit organizations, not just not just Black and African American organizations, but ecumenical organizations. Here I am the 4th Episcopal District representative in the Louisiana Interchurch Conference, which is composed of Catholics, Episcopalians, AME Zion, AME, Church of Christ, etc., etc. Well, I share with them as we embark on making a difference in Louisiana as it pertains to criminal justice, as it pertains to ensuring that our shores are not depleted, as it pertains to lobbying against all companies who are trying to disadvantage poor and minority people. We work together to bring legislation to the state government that will help those who are the lost, the least, the left out among us. When a church is involved outside of its four walls, you would be amazed to see how the Holy Spirit will show up. The Holy Spirit is in the streets. And if you want the Holy Spirit in your church, go in the streets and the Holy Spirit will follow you back in your church, because you're going to find out that you are empowered to make a difference where you are. And when that starts happening in your church, people are calling your pastor, people are calling the chairman of your steward board. They see you as a resource. that will create vibrant ministry that will be recognized by the city and, of course, by the devil, which is why you got to ensure you stay prayed up. Amen. Amen.
Your last question, Dr. Griffin, before I give you an opportunity to sum up and make your closing case, comes from Elder Arinthia Mason. And let me pull that question up. And she says, how will you ensure that the CME Church will continue to march on?
The role of a bishop, I think one of its most important roles is to defend the beloved Zion, this tender plant, to preserve its traditions, even as it is welcoming new ideas and methods. It is to ensure that we do what Paul told the bishops to do in 1 Peter, that we watch over the flock with a leadership bent, with a doctrinal bent, with a spiritual bent. And when we see false entities, we are to address that. We are to keep those entities from taking hold within our church. How will I ensure the CME Church continue to march on? By continuing to be a proud CME myself, by continuing to exhibit those characteristics that make us unique, that make us connectional, that make us the people of God that we are, by always promoting and never shying away from promoting who we are and what God is allowing us to do in the world. I believe that we as CMEs need to take ownership of who we are and not take a back seat to any other denomination, because I know that just as, and this may be a little preachy, but just as Jesus said, into thy hands I commend my spirit, I believe he was commending his body of work to his heavenly Father before he left here. And I believe that if we would commend our work to our children and to our children's children, teaching them our history, getting them to become parts of our history, this CME Church will be valuable for years and years to come. Let us join together to commend the CME Church to the world, because we are somebody in God's army.
And on that note, Dr. Griffin, as I've asked the other aspirants to do, make your closing statement, your closing case to all of the delegates that are watching now and are pondering who they will vote for as a bishop in our church. Would you make your closing statement as to why you are the candidate and aspirant for this season in the life of our church?
Well, thank you again, Dr. Mason, for another opportunity. Certainly, I have enjoyed sharing with you and those on your platform today. I am ready from day one to be a bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I am ready not only to listen, but to act. I am ready because I believe that the first thing that we need is someone who is faithful, someone who will stand in the gap, someone who will lift the church up and not pull it down, someone who will say to the world, we are ready to bring the message of Jesus Christ to the world. I believe that we need someone who not only is ready to sit in the chair as bishop, but who's ready to get on their knees as a servant of God. I believe that this bishop, Earl J. Griffin Sr., will provide a growing leadership model. How do you go from grace to grace? How do you traverse this complex world and still remain Christian? How can you walk with the young adults and let them explore life without condemnation? How can you still be faithful to the gospel, but know that you must give people permission to live, to explore, to adventure, and to discover who they are. Because I still subscribe to Robert Tillett, that you have to have the courage to be who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and still be Christian. Still present yourself before God, knowing that no matter who you are or where you are, God loves you, God created you, and God didn't make any junk. And so therefore, as bishop, my role is to come alongside and help us walk together and be all that God has called us to be. Yes, we have challenges, but that's just dissonance. That is just the distance between where we are and where we're going. Yes, we have obstacles, but that's just dissonance. That's just the difference between where we are and where we're going. But I serve a God that where God guides, God provides. He provides insight, ideas, resources, personnel to ensure he gets the glory in every circumstance and situation in our lives. I don't feel no way tired, CME Church. I don't feel no ways depressed about our situation. I don't believe he brought us this far to leave us, and I am prepared to stand in the gap for us, that God might continue to smile on us and give us his peace. God bless you. Please visit my website, drearlgriffin.com. There's more information about my military career, my career in ministry, and my engagement socially. I want to get to know you. Please get to know me. Thank you for receiving my emails each week. Thank you for those who respond. God bless you and God keep you. And we'll see you in how many days?
41 days.
41 days.
Right.
Hallelujah. We're marching on. God bless you, everyone.
God bless you. And thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. And we appreciate the time that you have shared with us on today. We appreciate all of our candidates, but we're not finished yet. We're not finished yet. As I said, if you need to take a break, get you some water, some tea. Last but certainly not least, I'm delighted to share our final candidate or aspirant for this particular session, the Reverend Dr. Vanessee Adjei Burns. But before I bring her up, let me share this. Dr. Burns.
Hello, Dr.
Hello. How are you doing? Welcome.
I am doing okay. I'm still trying to figure out what day of the week I'm in. I'm returned from the time in Africa, but I am I'm doing well. Body's a bit exhausted, but I am doing well. Thank you for the question.
I can imagine, and certainly we want to hear a little bit about that trip. I know our dear sister and friend has asked the question, Mary Campbell McKinney, has anybody acknowledged the African work?
Oh wow,
so
okay.
You get a chance to respond to that just so recently from the motherland, and I'm headed there after the after the general conference. I'm headed to Ghana, so I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you for being here. I shared that you had another event and that you would be on later. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into it as we've done with the other candidates. You are offering yourself as a candidate for the episcopacy. What has prepared you and what will distinguish you on the bench? And are you ready to serve day one?
Wow. So let's see which aspect of that question I want to tackle first. What has prepared me? I've had an opportunity to have served now, in the 6th, the 7th, the 5th, and the 8th Episcopal District. And so I've had an opportunity to see the church across its spectrum and to understand that no Episcopal district is the same, no group of people are the same. But also with that service, I've also have had the opportunity to work as a prison chaplain, a maximum security male prison that housed death row inmates. I've been trained in the Veterans Hospital. I've done a year's resident work at the Mental Health Hospital in South Carolina. I also, outside of my degrees in theology, I also have recertified and myself by getting the post-baccalaureate degree in marriage and family therapy outside of just already having the CPE in my belt. And so I think that in that regard, just in where I've served, but the other aspect of it is being able to understand and to sit with people that are from differing backgrounds, different economic statuses. Also, having worked in the community on multi-layered levels. I had an opportunity when I was in Charlotte to serve as the chair of the Citizens Review Board that investigated many of the actions of police officers and report those directly to the police department and back to the mayor and those who are responsible for the hiring of police officers. And yet, even in Dallas, I've been chosen to serve on the advisory board to the police department. In Texas, I started, am the founder of the Dallas chapter of the Texas of the Poor People's Campaign, and I, along with 2 others, are responsible for the Poor People's Campaign being in the state of Texas. And just a whole lot of community work. And so I understand partnerships. I understand working across denominational lines. Myself and along with some other pastors in Dallas, that we looked at our Black Methodist bodies and we pulled together to do what we call the Dallas Fort Worth Black Methodist United, and pulling together AMEs, CMEs, AME Zions, so that we could worship together and tackle issues before the issues arose. So many times we are reactive to things instead of being proactive. And so I think all of those things have equipped me, have prepared me to be able to serve the church on a larger level, to bring a diverse perspective to that. And I do think that, yes, on day one, I would be ready to serve our Zion. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for responding. So have you had a chance, and I've asked all of the other candidates, have you had a chance to read the strategic plan or to peruse it? And does it align with the vision that you have? If you're elected bishop, does the strategic plan align with what you view our church and the future of our church? Would you care to elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, I hope people are that they're able to hear me for the fullness of what it is I'm about to say. To me, a lot of the strategic plan, I don't know any other way to say it, is kind of common sense. It's things that we should already be doing: discipleship, preparing people for international work, looking at stewardship, biblical understanding. So those things, to me, as we look at in this journey, we talked about back to the basics, are some basic kind of things. I think that I'm still trying to navigate the necessity of us voting on something. And so that's the part I'm still trying to navigate around of that necessity, because it suggests to me that in order for that, since we are calling for a formal vote to adopt something, then we adopt it so that we can now add a financial portion to it. And so that's the part that I'm not so necessarily clear about. But I think the plan in itself is, yes, of course, we should be doing this. And yes, these are things that absolutely align with the work of kingdom building.
Thank you. Question from one of our viewers: in lean times, most businesses and nonprofits very wisely take quick measures to reduce the economic impact pandemic, trickle-down community financial crisis, and dwindling church membership. If Bishop, what is your specific plan to innovate and position the church spiritually, socially, and financially to continue another 150 years?
Okay, so I hear that question, and I guess I want to challenge that question just a little bit, because my understanding of many corporations is that they don't wait till lean times in order to begin to downsize and to look at restructuring. That most companies look toward the future and see that what we're doing now, is it sustainable for 5 or 10 years? They don't wait for it to get lean and say, oh, what do we need to do? And so when looking at this, I think that is more like the question we should be asking. We now are in a lean time, but we need to be asking that now, since we are in this time, what is it we need to do to ensure that the next 5 or 10 years are not necessarily lean, and that we've learned our lessons in this pandemic, in this crisis, to ensure that when another crisis arises, because another crisis will arise, that we are more prepared than we were when this pandemic came. And so in light of that, I think that it becomes imperative for us to look. We like to talk about politicians and the pork in the barrel and all the stuff that is on there. We like to talk about it when we look at politics, but we're not necessarily when we look at it in the church structure, because we become then super spiritually sensitive when it comes to the church structure. And so what happens then is that things that need to be administrative in the church, we don't necessarily address, because somebody then says, well, we are attacking the things of God, and not understanding that God calls us to be good stewards. When we look at the Old Testament, here it is that God, apparently good stewardship is important, because when we look at Joseph in Egypt, that God allowed Joseph to interpret a dream that, hey, 7 years, you're going to have a good 7 years, but they're going to be 7 years of famine. And so what does that mean? It means then that God understands that strategy is important for our survival. But when we become super sensitive around the issues of the church, and then we want to say that in our touching something, that we are touching God, but not looking at the entire picture, that God desires for us to be wise stewards in this, then I think that we set ourselves up to be in another crisis when another crisis arises. And so I believe that it takes having the right minds at the table who understand business, having the right minds at the table who understand the interactions with people. And so I don't know if I'm gonna get the question later, so I guess I'll hold off on it. But we have so much talent and so many gifts that are within the church, and we choose to become super spiritual when we start talking about downsizing. Okay, now we're spiritual. Okay, but when we're in worship, it don't take all that. But when it comes to the administration of the church, ooh, let's not touch the matters of God. And so we have to begin to prepare now for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I hope I addressed your question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much. And speaking of, I asked one of the previous candidates and aspirants about merging and the discussion of merger. Is it viable? We don't necessarily talk a lot about it, but as a bishop in our church, is it something that you would look at and consider? You know, I know this is hypothetical because bishops don't know where they're going until they know where they're going, but is that a conversation that we need to have?
I think it is a conversation we need to have. And I want to say it is in the Tennessee area that about 10 years ago, the United Methodist Church started liquidating a lot of its assets, okay, and prized pieces of land, prized property, and in their liquidation, they were able to put into their coffers somewhere between 10 and 20 million dollars. And so people were saying, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Well, they had a plan. They were able to see down the road and they were looking at what was happening to them holistically as a denomination, where the trends have been with Pew Research and some other demographics, how people were shifting and where they were living, where are the hot spots of the city? Where most of the where is the country moving toward? And they were seeing that if they did not put something in place then, that they were setting themselves up for a loss. So they were able to sell properties 10 years ago at a maximum rate, that if they had waited 10 years later, that they would have already been at a loss. And so I think that mergers in some areas will be necessary. But I think, again, that we have to look at it holistically, not at where we are today. If we just keep looking and we have, because we got a paycheck today and we're living from paycheck to paycheck, then we don't have a sustainable model. But in our looking at 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, is this community going to be sustainable? What are the what's the real truth about the demographics? Is this company that's keeping the community alive? What are their plans? You know, is GM planning on staying in this city, or is GM planning on going somewhere else? The company has their layout. So if GM is moving, guess what? Jobs are going to move. If jobs are going to move, people are going to move, right? And so even though a church has been vibrant and sustainable before, everything else around it changed. So we too must be a relevant people and be ready to adjust in a way that makes common sense for us, both financially and spiritually.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that response. And Dr. Nellie King, I see your question. I'm going to save it for a few minutes. I got a couple of questions to ask Dr. Burns, and we want to deal with apportionments and appointments, two always hot topic issues in our church. Let me put the first question up. Just 1 second. Okay. This was a question that I asked earlier from Dr. McDuffie. Bishop Lakey once said that the most important job that a bishop has is making appointments to the local churches. With that being said, how do you hope to address the lack of qualified preachers being admitted on trial to pastor our churches, and in light of new persons coming into the itinerancy that don't see the itinerancy in the way preachers in past generations were accepting of the itinerancy? And I'll put that first part up again for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me address the second part first, and then I'm going to ask if you could come back around to the first question. We always talk about our being Wesleyan or being Methodist, or being a true Methodist being Wesleyan. And when we look at the itinerancy, that we continue to take something that in its initial state and attempt to impose it now in its present state. When the itinerant ministry, or when we look at John Wesley and the Wesley brothers and what they did, itinerancy had single men in mind, and it felt that the movement of preachers was so that they could stay spiritually afresh and fresh. 100 years after this is when married men were part of the itinerant movement. And so when we talk about persons and not necessarily embracing itinerancy, I think, again, that comes to a place that we need to reevaluate the why we do what we do. Okay. That, yes, there are times that a pastor now has been in a place and they have pinnacled and it is time for a shift. But to simply shift someone for the sake of the system, instead of the system being for the sake of the church and the people, becomes an issue. And I think that in too many ways that we have lauded a system, and the system for what its initial purpose might not necessarily be relevant for what is needed now. If we're talking about having our churches be in places and cities of where we want to build relationships, It's hard for a pastor to build a relationship with the mayor or with the chief of police or with the judge or with the probate if that pastor is only there for 1 or 2 years. That takes time. I don't know any mother whose child gets in trouble that they don't want to be able to call their pastor and say, can you go down and talk to the chief of police? Can you go down and have a conversation with the mayor? Do you have any influence? But if we continue to shift people just for the sake of the system, then what we do then is that we automatically remove the kind of influence that we can have. And so, yes, and so when we look at the other part, how do we deal with preachers, if they're not being trained? Well, if they're not being trained, whose fault is that? If we have a committee on ministerial examination, if we have the quarterly conference and they're being examined at the local church and taught, whose fault is it that they aren't trained? And so putting that blame on a young preacher, I think, is like putting the blame on a child in a school system where the teacher never shows up. You can't blame the child for not learning if the teacher isn't present. It becomes the responsibility of, once a person has answered a call to ministry, that they begin the process of being taught. And teaching doesn't stop once you even complete committee on ministerial examination. Teaching doesn't stop because you're now ordained. But we talk about, I'm blessed in my church to have a retired pastor that's with us. I think that we could use what I call a council of retired elders, right? Those who have pastored for years, make them a council, right? Have them work alongside the committee on ministerial examination, right? Have them be in places where a young pastor can call and lean in. Mentor, can't just, say, okay, you're going to be with this person, but match the right personalities together so that they can have somebody who's seasoned to walk along with them. If they are not prepared, it's our responsibility. That fault is on us. It's not on them. And we need to stop blaming the individuals who don't have the training when it's our responsibility to train them. I can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for that response. That was actually a question that someone had posed a while back about what do we do with our retired preachers and those who have been pastoring for a while. So you kind of touched on that as well. Another question that came in, Dr. Burns, had to do, and I'm going to put it up. What is your realistic plan on assessments, especially for those churches who for years have declined in their membership? You've heard this question before.
Yeah. So I've said it before in some other spaces that at the top of this pandemic, we received a communication that we needed to look at downsizing because our churches were not able to be open. And so we needed to look at our budgets. We needed to restructure some things so that we could still make sure that the church could make it through this new time and experience. The thing that I find the most interesting about this is that we did at Christian Chapel, we had to make some adjustments. We had to see who we could keep on with because there was so much uncertainty. But one thing that never got downsized for us, what was still asked for us on other levels. And so we ask people to make adjustments on one level, but yet we don't necessarily see the same adjustment on another. The truth of the matter is this, is that our churches have dwindled in size. Some of our churches perhaps will never reopen after the pandemic. And so if an Episcopal district does not take an honest assessment at its budget, then what is the Episcopal district then saying about stewardship, which is one of the parts of the strategic plan? about stewardship. What are we saying if we're not going to make the necessary adjustments to it? Come on, we can't talk out of both sides of our mouths. If we're going to do this, we have to do it on every level of the church. We have to be stewards. Are there some things that can be cut? Yes. Do we need a little bit more transparency around some things? Yes. Churches that have heavy burdens, I believe that there are some varied ways that assessments can be adjusted. I don't think that the greatest portion of our assessment, it does not come from the general church. The greatest portion of our assessment comes from Episcopal districts. And so then the Episcopal district then needs to find ways to be more creative in collaborating in raising its funds. And I think that there are a lot of ways that that can be done, that the Episcopal district coming together in doing this in some innovative ways of tapping the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, right? That we got some folk who not church, but we can get their money and it can be used for the church in ways that are still under the 501c3 standards, that we don't break any federal laws, but we can use this in order to sustain ministries and do the kind of work so we can take those burdens off of the local churches.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Talk about your vision and plan for engaging more youth and young adult in the ministry. What plans, what are you doing now with your church that you would carry on as a bishop if you are elect?
You know, I continue to find, and I want to speak, I guess, more specifically to the young adult aspect of it. We say about engaging persons, but we don't have that same question about engaging young adults when we're asking for their tithes and their offerings. And so I continue to be perplexed at why then we are challenged when we talk about engaging young adults, when we don't talk about engaging young adults when it's offering time, when it's tithing time, when it's giving time, when it's raising money. The fact of the matter is this, is that young adults, when we look at what we call their age of 18 to 35, we look at the first group of them, and financially, we should not require as much because we are hoping that most of our young adults are just getting out of high school. They're either going to college, they're starting their jobs, they're finding their way. But let's look at that group that's 23 and above. Most of these folk have earned their bachelor's degrees. Many of them are working on their masters. By the time they're 26, they have their master's degrees. So we keep talking about young adults as though young adults are not doctors, as though young adults are not CEOs of companies, that they're not in the corporate world. We keep acting like young adults are not teaching at schools. They're not principals, vice principals. We keep acting like young adults are not professors at colleges. Our mindset is that we keep acting like that they're this toddler group, that they're not yet equipped, but yet our Facebook lines have been loaded with all of these graduation pictures of persons that they graduated with their bachelor's, their master's degree, some even doctorate degrees. And then when we come to the church, we say, now what are we going to do with these little babies? Where are we going to use them? We're working against ourselves. They are our brightest. They are our best. Put them to work. They have the gifts. Use them in how they are being used. It is our responsibility, not just for young adults, but for all of the church to continue to nurture them so that they can grow spiritually, but they bring gifts and graces. They are adults. Use them. Let them speak. Pull them to the front. Because why? If we don't use them, guess what happens? They're going to go right down the street to the Methodist Baptist Pentecostal Holiness Church, and they're going to be so happy that they walked in the door. And the first thing they're going to ask them is, what do you do? Where do you work? Oh, do you? Oh, wow, you work in finance. We can really use you then. on our finance committee. That's the first question the others ask, but we don't ask those questions. We say, no, they can't be on the finance ministry. We're going to make them junior stewards. They're 28 years old. Right? They have an MBA. Use them. That's why we equip them and we groom them. And so, yeah.
So lastly, talk a little bit about Africa. And one of our bishops, or two of our bishops, will be assigned to the 10th and the 11th. And how important is the work in Africa, and how important is an Episcopal aspirant, future bishop, to be keen on the work and needs of our brothers and sisters in Africa?
I think one of the first things, I don't know if we realize it or not, but we treat the 10th and 11th district much like white people have treated and treat Blacks. We keep looking at the persons in our motherland as though they are half of us, not as spiritual as us, not as grounded as us. And whenever we view people of our same melanin that way, whether we realize it or not, what we've done is that we have bought into white supremacy. We have bought into the westernized way of thinking that those on the motherland cannot be as equipped, as intelligent as those who are in the western part of the world. This last trip was absolutely phenomenal, and I didn't realize something until we were in the worship experience, and we were in Sudan, and I didn't realize it. It was something that you know, but you didn't know until you hear it, and then it reminds you that you knew it, but you forgot. And one of the elders stood up and he said, "Welcome to Sudan, the land of the Cushites." And I sat there and I went, "Oh, that is right. The Cushites from the beginning. This is where we are, right?" And so when we get to Egypt and we're walking and we're seeing the pyramids, and it's just tremendous because the Egyptians wanted to make a point of understanding that they are African. And, you know, they're putting their arm beside our arm. We are you. We are African. And they wanted to make sure we understood that however the West has made them like the Middle East, no, we are African. Mm-hmm. And then one of our individuals said, and I need you to understand that there are two pyramids and a pharaoh is buried in Sudan, in Cushite, right? And so what does that mean? It means then that the Cushites, along with Egyptians, had the intelligence to build a pyramids that still exist 5,000 years later. How is that less than us? How is it that we don't need to learn from them? How is it that some who don't have what we have, how is it that they innately understand that God is the God of all people and that God has created them to worship? One of the hardest things to do in some of our churches is to get people to worship. We have something to learn from that. But just outside of the fact of when we look at biblical history and knowledge, and especially in the work of East Africa, that the Nile River that flows upward from Ethiopia, around Rwanda, Uganda, Sudan, Tanzania, we look at this is where biblical history is. This is something we should be embracing. This is something we should be happy to say this is part of us. Why? Because this is where we ourselves can learn. This is where we ourselves can grow. And we must stop looking at the people that are our ancestral heritage and history as second-class citizens. We need to see them as the people from whom we ourselves can learn and grow from. Oh, good God Almighty.
Sounds like you've been to Africa. That's what it sounds like. I've been 8 times. And so I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you, and I cannot wait to go my 9th visit in Ghana right after the General Conference. So time is wrapping up. I want you to give your closing statement to make your case. But before you do that, when I was in the 12th grade, I ran for SGA president, student government president.
Yes.
And I stood up and I promised that we would have more meetings with the principal and that we would do community service. My opponent said, we're going to have more pep rallies and parties. Guess who won?
Your opponent?
My opponent did.
Yeah.
I was crushed, but I learned my lesson. Now, if I was to run again, would I promise more pep rallies and parties? Probably so. A few years ago, you offered yourself as a candidate.
Yeah.
As you make your closing statement, what have you learned since then that has helped you to form the kind of Episcopal leader you hope to be if you are elected? Would you make your case to the delegates as to why you are the candidate, the aspirant for this Episcopal position for this season in our church? Take a couple of minutes to do that. I'm going to give you full screen as I've done all of the candidates.
And so in this, just clarification, as I'm answering your question, I'm also making my final appeal, Dr. Mason?
Yes, if you would. Just kind of tie it in a little and then go ahead into your final statement. Okay.
One of the things I want to say in he asked about what did I learn. One of the things that I really learned, I'm getting feedback. Is that on my end? I wanted to make sure. Okay. Is that I have been so richly blessed by the people of Texas. I thought I knew our church, but Texas taught me a full different perspective on our church. And I'm grateful for my journey in Texas. How they do church, how they see church, how they have their communal bond with each other is absolutely powerful. And Texans also just simply do things different. There's a model for the state about, that Texans do everything big. Well, I thought we did stuff big in the Carolinas, but I didn't see big until I got to Texas. But I learned a lot. I learned also that you can have a similar kind of struggle, but yet the approach that you make to that similar kind of struggle has to be different because you're dealing with a different group of people in a different region. And so it is different. And so I'm grateful for that. So I believe that I have grown a whole lot more. My perspective has widened quite a bit just from having been exposed to the people of the 8th District. And I'm grateful for all that they have taught me and what I am still learning. But I believe that in this time that our church, we're at a critical place. I think the pandemic exposed that there are some things that we were not ready for. And in some things that we were not ready for, that we had to embrace some of the things that we kicked against. We've kicked against being more innovative. We kicked against the social media. We kicked against the things where we talk about the video and capturing and how it is and the ways that we communicate. We were not prepared. And I believe that in the pandemic, one of the things is that we had to adjust at Christian Chapel. But we had been preparing because we'd always been pushing the envelope for the next. That when I go into any church where I've been able to be blessed to pastor, that one of the first things to do, I bring all the people together. I listen to them. I need to hear what it is that they've done well, what it is they kind of want to continue to do, and where their hopes are. And then from that, begin to build a platform. One of the challenges has been is that I've always had a 5-year plan. What is our 5-year plan? Is one of the things that congregations have wrestled with me around, because they're like, wait a minute, we're just trying to do next year's calendar. We're just trying to do the program for next 6 months. But we have to have a long-term plan and objective, and you have to have it in a way that you are not afraid to make mistakes. There's some things that won't work, and it's okay. But what we have to do is learn from the things that don't work and not continue to repeat those things. And so I believe that I can bring to the bench. I believe that I can bring innovation. I believe I can bring diversity. Look at any corporate model that when they brought in women, that the company has done much better when they brought a woman's voice to the table. We don't need one woman as we have now, and we thank God for Bishop Teresa Snorden. We need more voices of the women at the table. Why? The Tea Party, back Boston Tea Party erupted because they had taxation without representation. Women, we are supporting the church. Put us in the place that our voices can be heard, because we have consistently shown you that we support and we love our church. I believe that I can bring the pastoral care component in a more expansive kind of way. I believe that I can put in components of teaching that are necessary, components that look at strategic planning in regard to finances. These are things, what I call real-time ways of what our church needs if we're going to be serious about pivoting into our future. And so I want to say this and close with this. A lot of the other candidates are asking for you to vote for them and that you believe in them. I'm asking you to cast a vote for me because I believe in you. I believe in your gifts. I believe in your graces. I believe in your potential. And just as persons respond to ministry where it is that I've pastored, I believe an Episcopal district will respond, and we'll see our church grow to even higher heights. Thank you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Burns, for sharing and for the generosity of your time. I'm going to bring the other aspirants up who are still here in the room sharing. We have been just tremendously blessed. Thank you all for the generosity of your time this evening. I'm appreciative, and I know the entire church is. I would ask all of you to spend some time in the comments. If you saw me looking away, I'm glancing at the phone and in the chat rooms and trying to keep up with all of the questions and comments. Some we were not able to get to. Dr. Nellie King, who is my dear friend, I promise you, next week's candidates will get that first question that you asked again. But thank you all. God bless you on your journey. And how many days are we to Cincinnati? Well, I'll tell you. We are 41 days to the General Conference. And we pray that what is most important now, that we be in prayer for our church. And that we will have a mighty move of God as we make decisions that are going to impact us for the rest of our days. Let me thank Reverend Dr. Adjei. Let me thank Reverend Frederick Braddock, Presiding Elder Braddock, Presiding Elder Diana Castille, Presiding Elder Earl Griffin, and Reverend Dr. Vanessee Burns. God bless you all, and we'll see you in Cincinnati again. Thank you.
God bless you.
Bless you. Thank you, family and friends and
Thank you.
CMEs. Oh, you're very welcome for sharing. And again, on this coming, don't click off yet. Remember that on this Monday, tomorrow night, we have the expanding of the body of Christ 3-day dedication, May 16th through 18th. And go to the Facebook page to click and get the Zoom for that. Also, on next Sunday, at 5 p.m., I will have part 2 of my candidates forum with Dr. Charlie Hames, Dr. C. Kelby Heath, Dr. Ricky Hilton, and Reverend Manuel Henderson. I look forward to seeing you on next Sunday. And again, we will continue to pray for our brothers and our sisters in Buffalo, and to pray for this entire world, that this type of violence will be eradicated one day. God bless you. Have a blessed evening, and we'll see you soon.